in the first section with back face culling and sort of really sort of overemphasise the point that any polygons facing away from the viewer are ignored. What I just want to show you is just I've got that village animation here, but this time I've got nope, I've still got it with that's not back face. So I'm going to bring up the village animation. Okay, now this is with back face culling. Hey guys, pay attention. Okay, so this animation is with back face culling. You can see the objects, they look solid, but something odd's happening. Sort of like they're not sort of appearing where they should. Sort of certain, like the church is appearing in front of the houses, and this and the other. So whilst back face culling does sort of make our objects look solid, we still got some way to go before it can be totally applied. Okay, so we've got another problem here. Okay, we don't want things going in front of objects when they shouldn't. So as this comes round, so I think some of the houses go in front of the other houses and what have you. Okay, so it's still not great. So this is where the next technique comes along. And this technique is called the painter's algorithm, and it's so called because it's similar to how an oil painter paints. Do we have any artists in here? I always ask that every year. Seems like mathematicians and don't tend to be artists. Okay, well, when you paint with oil paints are opaque, so you've got to paint the background first. So if you're painting a scene, like a very pretty sort of outdoorsy scene, you paint the mountains in the background first, then you paint the middle ground, and then you paint the foreground last. So things which are furthest away from you, paint first, and things which are closest to you, you paint last, which is essentially what painter's algorithm is. It's as simple as that. It's the order in which we apply, or order in which we render our polygons. So this is the algorithm. So you require a set of front-facing polygons. So imagine you've already done back-face culling. So any polygon which is back-facing, you've removed it. So you're only left with the front-facing polygons. And what we do is you sort the polygons in descending order of the smallest z coordinate of each polygon. Okay, so let's say you've got a triangular polygon, you've got three vertices, they may have different z coordinates. So which one do you pick? We pick the smallest one, well, which is closest. For all polygons, going in the order in which they were sorted, so you've now got a list of your polygons from first to last, sorry, from last to first, sorry, you render it in that order. Okay, so that's painter's algorithm. How it works, well, I've got another one of my sort of simplistic diagrams here. I've got three polygons. Obviously, A is furthest away, so that should be rendered first. B is the next closest, that's rendered second. And C is the closest, so that'll be rendered third. Okay, so as you're looking at it, so let's say this is, you look at A, that's polygon A, okay? And that's B sort of overlapped with A, and finally that's C on top. So you can still see parts of A. You may still see some polygons which you've rendered early on in the process. You may still see them, but they're partially obscured by the closer polygons. And that's called painter's algorithm. Okay, I just want to show you the, if I go back to my village code. Okay. Just pretend you haven't seen all that. Okay, so now that's the same thing. So we've got the backface culling applied, and we've also got painters. So as you can see, this is pretend it's just sort of the you're flying around your village, and you can see it's done it in the order which it should do. Sometimes there may be a bit of graphical glitch every now and again. I don't know if you've ever played computer games and things look a bit weird occasionally, especially if you get close to a wall or something, or you manage to see through a wall which you shouldn't see through. But this one's fairly simplistic. So that's painters and backface culling applied. Okay, we do have problems. Okay, well, how would you sort this one out? Let's say we've got these 3 polygons. So they're all overlapping. Well, each one is in front of one but behind another. Okay, so with Painter's algorithm, this one would struggle. The actual solution for here is you'd have to split some of these up. So let's say you had this diagonal one here. We can cut this polygon into 2. Okay, that would be the solution to that bit. Okay. There is another algorithm called Newell's algorithm, but I'm not going to go through that. Okay, and that's after Painters, which we just saw. Okay, the last algorithm we're going to be looking at is called the Z buffer. Now this is actually similar to Painters. Now Painters does it on a polygon basis. You say, okay, which polygon's furthest away? We'll render that one first. Z buffer does it on a pixel by pixel basis. So if you imagine all your pixels on your screen, what you do is you say, okay, which is the closest object or which is the closest color for each pixel? Okay, so pixel by pixel basis, we need 2 arrays, or called buffers. Okay, so when I say buffer, just think of it as an array or a matrix. Okay, it's called the depth buffer. Now, there is an element for each pixel. So if you've got, let's say you've got 100 by 100 pixels, you'd have 100 by 100 matrix. Each value or each element in that matrix stores the Z distance, so how far into the distance, the nearest surface in the aligned world space for that pixel. So imagine you're shooting a ray into your world. What's the first surface that ray would hit? That would be the distance for the Z buffer. Okay, you also have what we call a frame buffer, which is exactly the same size as your Z buffer, which is exactly the same size as your screen pixel array, and that stores what we say the index of the polygon, or more often you should determine color. So let's say it stores the color. So if your closest polygon is a red polygon for that particular pixel, in your frame buffer you store that red color. Okay, I've got this algorithm here. It's slightly more complicated. With the Z buffer, you start with a set of polygons. A depth buffer array, I'm going to call it Z, hence the word Z buffer, and a frame buffer array F. So Z and F are just large matrices which are the same size as your pixels on your screen. A few sort of nested loops, so it's quite an involved algorithm. What you do is for every polygon in your world, or in your sort of clipped aligned world space, for every polygon and for all pixels in that polygon. So not only do you have to consider the polygon, you have to say, okay, which pixels are in the polygon or not, and we'll look at methods to do that in a few weeks' time. And for all pixels in the current polygon, you calculate the Z coordinate of that pixel. How far away is that pixel away from the screen? In other words, how far away is that surface at that point away from the screen? If that value is less than one which is currently stored in the Z buffer, you replace it. So you found a closer one. So you'll always look for the closer one. So if you found a closer surface than the one currently stored, you replace the Z buffer with that value, and you replace the frame buffer to the same pixel with the color of that polygon. You keep going, so you may find a closer one. And if you, once you've done all your polygons, your frame buffer is essentially what your screen will appear. It will be all the color information for the pixels will be in that frame buffer, and that's what you sort of show on the screen. Now, there's a couple of tricky things here. Oh, here's an example. Okay, what have I got here? How many? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About 10 by 10 pixel array. We start with, well, I've said infinity, but you normally have your maximum draw distance. So that's your, that would be, well, actually, it would be 1 if you scaled it to the unit cube. And at the moment, your frame buffer is empty. It's blank. Okay, because we haven't considered any polygons. Okay, let's say we got this polygon here. Okay, this is a red one, and I found the depth to each of the pixels in the red polygon here, and they're all less than infinity, so I've replaced them. And the frame buffer, again, those pixels get replaced by the red color. But what if I was to have another polygon in the same world? Okay, I've got this sort of, well, it looks blue on the screen and like purple there. Okay, for some of these ones in the red, oops. Okay, there's a couple which, from what I can see, are, yeah, these two. So if you keep an eye on these two, at the moment, these two pixels here have got a depth of 5. Okay, but when I consider the next polygon, they've got a depth which is less than 5, so these will get replaced. Okay, and all of these you can see are the same. So this is your frame buffer. So we've got sort of polygons overlapping each other. So on a pixel by pixel basis, we can actually calculate what's the closest surface. Okay, how do we calculate the pixel coordinate? Right, this is, we're going from what we call a vector space, so everything's described in vectors, the coordinates, to a discrete space called pixel space. Okay, and I called my coordinates yp, z, xp, yp, zp. And these have all got to be natural numbers. Okay, you've all got to be whole numbers, positive whole numbers. So how do we calculate, if I've got a coordinate in my screen space, how do I calculate the equivalent coordinate on my pixels? Okay, well, we have a number of pixels in the horizontal direction, and we have an aspect ratio. So let's say we've got 100 pixels in the horizontal direction and a 4:3 aspect ratio. So what we can then do is we can calculate the number of pixels which will be in the vertical direction. So I think it's 1080 is sort of standard now, high def. I think you get probably in television. Have you ever heard of 1080p, 720, all that? That's the number of rows of pixels. Now they've gone to 4K. It's not 4K rows, it's 4K wide. So it's all marketing anyway. But there we go. So that's calculating the number of pixels in the vertical direction. And we scale it. So at the moment, our screen space is between -1 and 1. And we want to scale it so our pixel space is between 1 to the number of pixels in the x direction and 1 to the number of pixels in the y direction. So we do it like this. We have screen space plus 1. What that does is that ensures that this range is now in the range of 0 to 2. So we can't have a negative. Multiplied by x scale, and x scale is simply half of the number of pixels in that area, in that region, and that will give you your x coordinate. The max 1 means we never go below 1, okay? Because sometimes you can get 0, and we can't have a 0 pixel. Pixels are like sheep. It's sort of counting. Show me a 0 sheep. Okay, we can't. Okay, so that's what that max is. So max 1 means, okay, if it's 0, just round it up to 1. X scale is number of pixels in the x direction divided by 2 times xs plus 1. Okay, and that will give you your x and y coordinates. So from your screen space to your pixel space, that's your x and y coordinates. Okay, well, that's for the vertices of the polygon. How do we calculate coordinates across the sides of the polygon and the interior? We use something called linear interpolation. Have you done this before? You heard of something called Lagrangian interpolation? Yeah. Okay, that's, you're given 2 points, given information of those 2 points, draw a straight line between them, and then we can calculate all the points in between. So here I've got a triangle. P0, P1, P2 are vertices. Okay, and what we do with displays is we go down rows of pixels at a time. So if you're ever to sort of video, I think video is quite high. If you have to get an old video camera and point it at a TV screen, you'll see sort of slow lines moving down. That's because when your TV or your monitor renders the display, it does it line by line at a time. So it does all the top row of pixels, then it does the next row, and it does the next row, etc. So that's what we do. It's called scan lines. Okay, so we loop through horizontal rows of pixels at a time. So for this polygon, start at the top, and we loop across the row. So for example, here's a scan line. We calculate pixel A, or the coordinates of A. We calculate coordinates of B. So A is along this edge. So we interpolate between P2 and P0, and B is along this edge. So we interpolate between P1 and P2. Okay. Then we can interpolate between A and B across the interior to give us C. Okay. How do we do this? Well, in order to save time, there's lots of things we can do. Your y coordinate is simply going to be one less than the one before. So let's say we know what AI is and we know what BI is. Your next y coordinate for A, which is this one, is just going to be whatever the previous one minus 1, because you're going down a row of pixels. And the same for YB. For your x coordinate, we've gone, in this case, we've gone to the left a bit, and in this case, we've gone to the right a bit. Okay, you simply minus some delta XA and delta XB, which will be some constant. And the constant is essentially the form of the gradient. Okay, so this is constant. Delta XA and delta XB are constant for all along that edge. Okay, so we just, all we're doing is subtracting some number each time. And of course, we have to round pixel coordinates to the nearest whole number, because we can't have half a pixel. Pixels are discrete entities. You can't say, oh, half a pixel tiny. It's either 1 pixel or no pixels. So x and y coordinates are quite easy. Across the scan line. Okay, remember dealing with pixels. So if you know the information from 1 pixel, the next pixel to the right is simply your x coordinate of that pixel plus 1. Okay, so if you know what the x coordinate for that pixel is, you just add 1 to it to get next to the right. And the y coordinate is even simpler, because the scan line is a horizontal line. Your y coordinate of pixel C is simply equal to YA. Now the z coordinate is slightly different. Now we're doing z buffer, so we need to know how far what a z coordinate is. Now I know on a display you've only got x and y, but we're sort of imagining, okay, there's going to be a depth to it. So I'm just going to sort of remind or delve back into the realms of sort of vector equations. Anybody remember that? Oh, no, you don't remember it because you can't see it. Okay, what's that? Anybody tell me what that's called? Assignment 2. Vector equation of a plane. N dot R equals S. What is N? Normal vector. What's R? R is any point on that plane. So let's say I've got a plane. There's N. R could be any point on that plane. N dot R equals S. S is some scalar. For any other point on the plane, N dot that point would also equal S. So that's how we know whether a point is on that plane or not. Okay, well let's say, okay, Rn is made up of Nx, Ny, Nz. And let's say our R is X, Y, Z. Okay. We know what X and Y are. So let's say we're dealing with our pixels. We know the coordinates of our x and y. Let's say we need to know what the coordinate of z is. Now, if I multiply out this dot product, so I'll get x times nx plus y times ny plus z times nz equals s. I know what n is, because that's my polygon. I know what x and y is. I don't know what z is. So rearranging it all, okay, I have s minus x nx minus y ny over nz. So that gives me an expression for the depth of that pixel. Okay, let's pretend I know what that is. Okay, let's pretend I've got some information on that. And I want to find what's the depth of the pixel 1 to the right. Okay, well, I'm going to say zi plus 1. So, for example, here's two neighbouring pixels. I know what the z of that is. I need to know what the z one is. Okay. So the pixel to the right has the coordinate x plus 1. So that had a coordinate x. So 1 to the right is just add 1 to it. Okay. So that's my expression for z coordinate 1 to the right. Well, I could split this up into two fractions. Okay, so I can say s minus x and x minus y and y over nz. Okay. I've also got another nx here, so I'm going to take that over here. Now split it in two. Okay. This is what we had earlier. You notice that expression is the same as that one. So we have z equals, we have zi plus 1 equals z of nx over nz. So what does that mean? If I know the depth of the pixel to the left, the depth of the pixel to the right is that depth minus nx over nz. That's constant for all pixels in that polygon. Okay, so that's very easy to calculate. So using a bit of vector maths sort of saves us a lot of time, saves us a lot of messing about with coordinates. Now, sometimes you read graphics textbooks, and the authors go into all sorts of palaver with Cartesian coordinates, trying to calculate depth, trying to calculate this, that, and the other. If they only just turn to vector maths, it becomes a lot easier. Okay, so that's where that comes from. Okay, so if you know the depth of pixel zi, the pixel to the left simply minus nx over nz. That's constant. Calculate it at the beginning of your loop. You don't need to do it again. One problem about Z buffer is memory. Okay, it's very computationally efficient, as we see. It uses a lot of memory. So let's have a look at some sort of rough calculations. For a 1280 by 1024 pixel display, so that's 1280 wide by 1024 high, using 16-bit color model. I haven't talked about color yet, but RGB color model, RGB stands for red, green, blue. Now, if you combine different quantities of red, green, and blue, you can create all the colors, well, most of the colors in the visible spectrum. 16-bit just means each pixel has 16 bits of memory associated with that color. Okay, and a 24-bit depth buffer. That's how many different numbers we can store. So the higher this value, the more different numbers you can store. Okay, so the memory required is the memory for the depth buffer plus the memory for the frame buffer. So in total, we have 1,280 times 1,024 pixels times by the 24-bit for the depth buffer, and also times by the 16-bit for the frame buffer. Do all the sums, and we get down to about 52 million bits. A bit is just a 1 or a 0 in computer speak. We tend to convert bits to bytes, just that's what the sort of microprocessors work in. So this is 6,353 bytes, which is roughly 6.5 megabytes, depending on whether you use 1,024 bits in a 1,024 bytes in a megabyte or 1,000. So is that for a sort of discussion now? Okay, so using a relatively small amount of memory per pixel, we're still using 6.5 megabytes, and that's every frame, so that's every 60th of a second. So you are using a lot of memory. Good news is memory tends to be really cheap compared to computational power. It's cheaper to upgrade memory than it is to upgrade computational power. So that's your Z buffer. Right, if you turn over the hidden surface removal activity, turn over the other side, got an activity where we're going to do a very rudimentary, very sort of basic Z buffer.